For 12 long years, not once did my phone ring with an invitation. Birthdays, weddings, holidays, my family made sure I was erased. They built their lives around each other, while I sat in silence, staring at an empty chair, waiting for a call that never came. Now I sit in my home office, surrounded by walls lined with framed photos, not of them, but of what I built without them. The polished wood desk beneath my hands, the city skyline glowing through the tall windows, the heavy silence of success. Everything here is mine, and yet, even now, the memory of their rejection still burns. I remember the last time I tried to belong. I had shown up at a cousin's birthday party. The room was filled with laughter until my mother's voice cut through like glass. "You weren't invited," she said flatly. I stood frozen, holding a gift in my hands like an idiot. My brother laughed. "You always show up where you're not wanted. Don't you get it?" The shame that washed over me that night never left. I left that party, gift still in hand, and decided I would never beg them again. They wanted me gone? Fine, I would disappear. For years after I worked, harder than anyone thought I could. They used to call me the failure, the one who'd never amount to anything. My sister once sneered, "You'll be cleaning houses while we build ours." I etched her words into my memory like a scar. Every insult fueled me. Every closed door became another reason to keep going. I took the jobs no one else wanted. Long hours, brutal bosses, paychecks so thin they could slip through a crack in the wall. I saved every penny. I studied at night, bleary-eyed but determined. Slowly, painfully, I carved a life that was mine. And one day, I crossed a line they never thought I'd reach. I signed papers for my first property, then another. Eventually, I built the home I now sit in, a luxury house with high ceilings, a grand piano I can barely play, and floors so polished they reflect my face back at me. I should feel complete. And sometimes I do. But late at night, the silence carries questions I can't shake. Why wasn't I good enough? Why was blood so quick to turn cold? Still, I tell myself this truth. I survived them. And I thrived without them. Yet sometimes I hear their voices like ghosts echoing through the walls. My mother's voice, clipped and sharp. "You'll never make it without us." My brother's taunt. "No one wants you around." My sister's laugh. "You're a burden." Always have been. I used to crumble under those words. Now I whisper back into the silence. Look at me now. I leaned back in my chair, running a hand over the smooth leather armrest, trying to anchor myself in the present. My success wasn't theirs. It was mine. Every brick in this house was laid with my sweat, every dollar earned through scars they would never see. I thought I had buried them. I thought the past was behind me. But then, 3 sharp knocks echoed through the quiet halls of my home. The sound startled me. It was too late for visitors. I stood, cautious, my heart thudding in a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. As I crossed the marble floor toward the front door, I told myself it would be a delivery, maybe a neighbor, nothing more. But when I pulled the heavy door open, my breath caught in my throat. There they were, my mother, my siblings, even cousins I hadn't seen in over a decade, all standing on my doorstep, and they were smiling like strangers who had rehearsed it. They didn't look ashamed. They looked hungry. As they stood on my doorstep, their eyes darted past me and into the glow of the house. My marble floors, my chandelier, the polished furniture, all of it reflected in their stares like prey in a predator's sight. I stepped aside slowly, keeping my voice steady. "Come in." The moment they crossed the threshold, they spread out like tourists at a museum. My sister's heels clicked against the marble as she tilted her head back to study the ceiling. My brother ran his hand along the smooth banister of the staircase. A cousin whispered, "This place must have cost a fortune." I closed the door, trying to steady my heartbeat. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but never like this. Never with them gawking as if they were measuring what they could take. "Your home is breathtaking," my mother said. Her smile stretched too wide, her eyes glimmering not with pride but calculation. "Funny," I said softly, leading them into the living room. "I don't remember any of you being here when I first bought it." My words drifted into the air like smoke, but they ignored it. They settled onto the cream-colored couches, their gazes sweeping the room. The silence pressed in, heavy and false. Then my sister spoke. "We've missed you so much." I looked at her, letting the pause drag before I answered. "Funny," I said, pouring wine into crystal glasses. "I don't recall a single call in 12 years. The room froze. Glasses clinked against the table. No one met my eyes. Awkward silence. Finally, my brother coughed, forcing a laugh. "We were all too busy. Life has a way of getting in the middle." "Busy," I repeated. I set the bottle down harder than I meant to. 12 years of birthdays. 12 years of weddings. Funerals. Holidays. "I guess you were too busy to dial my number." No one answered. Instead, they tried a different tactic. Compliments. This couch is incredible. Italian leather? My cousin asked, running his hand across the cushions. The art, so elegant. Is that original? Another cousin whispered, leaning close to the framed painting on the wall. My sister sipped the wine, her smile sweet but thin. You've done so well for yourself. We're proud of you. The words were sugar, but the aftertaste was bitter. Pride? No. It was envy, barely disguised. And then the slip. One cousin, too comfortable, muttered, If we had a place like this, we wouldn't be worried about losing the house. I caught it. My eyes narrowed. Losing the house? His face drained of color. He glanced at my mother, who glared daggers at him. I didn't mean, but it was too late. The mask was cracking. I leaned back in my chair, studying them one by one. Their forced smiles, their restless hands, their darting eyes. This wasn't a family reunion. This was a hunt. Still, I kept my voice even. Tell me, what brings you here? After all this time. My mother shifted in her seat, smoothing the fabric of her dress. She gave a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. We missed you. We thought it was time to reconnect. Reconnect. A word too clean for 12 years of silence. I nodded slowly, folding my hands in my lap. Let them speak. Let them reveal themselves. But instead of answering, they kept circling around it. Empty chatter. Forced laughter. My sister asked about the car in the driveway. My brother complimented the wine. A cousin asked if the pool was heated. Every word was a thread trying to weave itself into my life again. Inside, suspicion spread like smoke through my chest. They weren't here to reconnect. They weren't here out of love. And then it happened. My mother's mask slipped. She leaned forward, her hands trembling slightly as she clasped them together. Her voice, sharper now, cut through the room. We need your help. Everything depends on you. Help? From the child they abandoned? The word rattled in my chest as I looked at them, sitting stiffly in my living room. The same room they had just been admiring now felt smaller, suffocating. Their eyes darted, their masks slipping with every second of silence. I leaned back slowly, crossing my arms. Help, I repeated, letting the words sting. That's what you came here for? My mother's lips tightened, but she nodded. We wouldn't be here otherwise. Of course, I murmured, my voice dry. 12 years of silence, erased in a single evening. No one met my eyes. They shifted in their seats, squirming against the expensive leather. The chandelier above threw sharp light across their faces, exposing every crack in their false smiles. Finally, my brother spoke. It's not what you think. We've just had bad luck. A streak of it. Bad luck, I echoed. 12 years worth? He flinched but pressed on. The businesses went under. Deals fell through. The economy didn't keep you from calling me. I cut in. Don't pretend it did. My sister chimed in quickly, her voice too sweet. We're not blaming anyone. We thought maybe now, with all that you have, you could help us get back on our feet. I laughed, but it was hollow. Back on your feet? Or back in control? They glanced at each other nervously, as though waiting for someone else to speak. My cousin fiddled with the stem of his glass, his hand trembling slightly. I leaned forward, my eyes sharp. Tell me the truth, all of it. No more games. Silence. Then another cousin muttered under his breath. The bank's taking the house. My head snapped toward him. What did you say? He froze. My mother's glare sliced across the room, warning him to shut his mouth. But it was too late. The truth had cracked the surface. I pressed harder. Which house? His voice broke. All of them. The loans. They're too much. We're drowning. A heavy stillness settled over the room. My mother finally sighed, shoulders slumping as if the weight of the lie was too much to hold. It's true. We've lost nearly everything. If we can't find help, we'll be out on the street. My pulse hammered, but my voice stayed calm. And after 12 years of silence, suddenly I'm the solution. My brother leaned forward, his voice sharp with frustration. You have so much. What's a little loan? My blood ran cold, but my words cut sharper. What was I worth to you 12 years ago? The question hung in the air, heavy and sharp. No one spoke. My sister lowered her eyes, her voice a whisper. We were wrong. Wrong? I repeated. You humiliated me. You erased me. You left me standing outside your lives like a beggar. And now you want to call it a mistake? My brother's jaw tightened. You're being dramatic. Families fight. We move past it. Families fight, I said, my voice low. But they don't exile one of their own. They don't let their child eat alone on Christmas. They don't pretend you're dead just because you refuse to be used. The silence that followed was thick, pressing against my ribs. I rose to my feet, pacing slowly across the room. My footsteps echoed against the marble floor. You want me to believe this is about family, but it's about money. Isn't it? No one argued. The truth was in their eyes, in the desperation, the shame, the hunger. And yet, even as the betrayal sank deeper, I felt something else rising inside me. Not weakness. Not hurt. Strength. A sharper edge than I'd ever had before. I turned to face them fully. You didn't come here to make peace. You came here to collect, and you thought I'd be too desperate for love to see through it. That's when my father's voice, cold and cutting, broke the silence. He stood, his frame looming as if he could still intimidate me. You owe us? He snapped. Without this family's name, you'd be nothing. They thought I had forgotten. They didn't know I kept everything. The laughter from the living room trailed faintly down the hall as I closed the heavy door to my study. My hand lingered on the polished brass knob for a moment, the weight of memory pressing harder than the metal itself. Their voices carried, muffled but venomous, each chuckle sharp enough to cut through the walls. I had smiled back at them tonight, offered drinks like a good host, but I could feel my jaw ache from the strain. Inside the study, the air was cooler, quieter, the shelves lined with leather-bound books, the faint scent of cedar, the dim glow of the desk lamp. This was my sanctuary. My heart thudded as I knelt by the bottom cabinet, pushing aside carefully stacked files until my fingers brushed cold steel. The old box. It was small, battered, the lock rusted with age yet still intact. I slid it out, my breath quickening. 12 years ago, I had promised myself I would bury the past, but instinct had made me hoard every scrap of proof. Not forgiveness, survival. The key lay where I had hidden it, taped beneath the desk drawer. My hands trembled as I turned it, the click loud in the silence. The lid creaked open. Inside, the ghosts of my childhood stared back. Letters, yellowed, brittle at the edges. I picked one up, the handwriting instantly recognizable. My mother's elegant looping script, as if beauty could disguise cruelty. It's better if you don't come. You only cause trouble. The family is happier without you. The words punched harder now than they did back then. I remembered standing on a freezing porch with my bag packed, waiting for a ride that never came. I had been erased from birthdays, holidays, graduations, cut out like an infected limb. Beneath the letters, a stack of old cassette tapes, the labels scrawled in my brother's jagged handwriting. I slid one between my fingers, hearing his voice in memory. Don't tell them we said it. Just say they left on their own. Lies, rehearsed and repeated until truth was smothered, and receipts, dozens of them. Money I had lent in desperation to prove my worth. Money that had vanished, unacknowledged, like I had. For a moment, guilt stirred. A fragile voice whispered inside me. What if they've changed? What if this time they really want you? But as I laid the evidence across the desk, the truth weighed heavier. Change was a costume they wore only when convenient. My reflection in the desk's glass surface caught my eye. I didn't see the child who once begged for love. I saw someone sharper, stronger, someone who had clawed their way out of a grave dug by the very people sitting in my living room. I whispered to the silence. They erased me once. They don't get to rewrite history now. I gathered the letters, the tapes, the receipts into neat piles. Proof of every betrayal, every cruelty. Proof I could wield like a blade when their lies tried to corner me. A swell of strength steadied me. This wasn't revenge, it was protection. If they thought they could use me, drain me, discard me again, they would learn how wrong they were. I snapped the box shut and rose, sliding it beneath my arm. The voices outside grew clearer as I approached the study door. I hesitated, the knob cool in my palm, when a phrase cut through the muffled chatter. If they don't give us money, we'll take the house another way. My blood froze. The words hissed, urgent and greedy. I leaned closer, ear pressed to the door, hardly breathing. A cousin's voice, sharp with resentment. They think they're untouchable, but everything has a crack. Another voice, my sister's, lower, vicious. This house should have been ours from the start. If we can't get their help, we'll find a way to make them sign it over. Silence. Then my mother's voice, calm, cold, final. Remember, everything depends on this. We can't walk away empty-handed. The air left my lungs. My grip tightened on the box until my knuckles whitened. They hadn't come for reconciliation. They hadn't come for love. They had come with knives hidden behind their smiles, ready to carve me open once more. But this time, I wasn't defenseless. I straightened, shoulders squared, my decision made. When I stepped back into that room, I would no longer be their child, begging for scraps of affection. I would be the one holding the truth, and I would make sure they understood exactly how much power I now had. If they wanted a performance, I'd give them one. The dining room glowed in soft candlelight, golden flames flickering across the polished oak table. Crystal glasses sparkled, the wine deep and ruby red, an expensive vintage I had opened deliberately. If they were going to circle me like vultures, then at least they'd do it with full glasses in their hands. They sat in their seats with hungry eyes, whispering admiration for the house, the china, the food. They ran their hands along the wood of the chairs as though they already owned them. Every smile was a mask, stretched too wide, too polished. I played the host. I poured the wine. I offered the bread. I asked them about their travels. The answers were rehearsed, shallow, as though speaking anything real might crack the illusion of family. Then, slowly, the conversation shifted. Imagine, my brother said, raising his glass, if we all went on a vacation together. A proper one, Italy, Greece. Somewhere we could really enjoy? Yes, my cousin chimed in, laughing. And you've got the perfect house to leave empty while we're gone. Don't worry, we'd make sure it's safe. I sipped my wine, letting their words hang in the air. The trap was already setting itself, but I decided to tighten the noose. And the cars, my sister added lightly, her fork tapping against her plate. Why keep them locked away? Things like that. They should be shared. I tilted my head, watching her. Shared, I repeated, as though tasting the word. Cousin leaned forward, eager, careless. We're family, we share. The laughter around the table swelled, warm and false. My smile stayed fixed, but my words sliced through it. Funny, I said softly. I remember sharing silence for 12 years. The laughter cracked. An awkward pause. A few glasses raised too quickly to lips. I let the silence stretch, just long enough for discomfort to creep across their faces. Then my sister, too eager to cover the slip, spoke again. Well, that was then. We're together now, aren't we? And we were just saying how much easier things would be if everyone contributed. You know, equally. Her words faltered as she caught herself, but it was too late. My gaze locked on hers. Equally? I asked, tone sharp as glass. Her cheeks flushed. She tried to laugh it off, but my cousin wasn't quick enough. He leaned back, smirking. She means we've already thought about it. Who gets what? How things should be divided. You know, if you ever needed help. The fork in my hand stilled. They had planned this. Before stepping into my house, before embracing me with feigned affection, they had sat around a table somewhere else and drawn up their imaginary map of my life. My blood boiled, but outwardly, I remained calm. I placed my fork down deliberately, the clink echoing through the candle-lit room. You've planned, I said, voice low. You've already decided how to divide what isn't yours. A murmur of protest rose. Overlapping excuses. Words like joke and hypothetical. I raised my hand and they fell silent. Inside, a storm raged, but I forced myself into icy composure. This was the moment I had prepared for. You've come into my home, I said, slowly and clearly, to drink my wine, eat my food, and speak of vacations, cars, houses, things you never built, never earned. And you think I don't hear the hunger in your voices? No one spoke. Their eyes darted to one another, looking for an escape that didn't exist. I leaned forward, letting the firelight catch my face. Do you think I'm still the child you abandoned? Do you think I don't see the knives behind your smiles? The room seemed to shrink, the walls pressing in. My mother cleared her throat, her voice brittle. We didn't mean... But I cut her off with a raised finger. Don't! Silence crashed over the table, heavier than stone. Their eyes were wide now, uncertain. They had expected weakness, softness, a desperate need for their approval. Instead, they were staring into something far colder. I lifted my glass, the red wine swirling like blood in the candlelight. Tomorrow morning, I said, my voice calm, almost pleasant. You'll meet someone very important. They leaned in, eager again, trying to catch some hidden promise. I smiled, sharp and unyielding. A lawyer. The glass touched my lips as their faces drained of color. The trap had snapped shut. They thought I meant a lawyer for them. I meant one for me. Morning light streamed through the tall windows, sharp and unforgiving, cutting across the dining room like blades. The air still carried the scent of last night's wine, but the laughter was gone. They sat stiffly now, overdressed, nervous in suits and pressed blouses as though the right fabric could erase the desperation from their faces. I entered in silence, a crisp suit hugging my frame, every step deliberate. Their eyes followed me, wide, watchful. The shift in power was already in motion, and they felt it. I didn't sit. I remained standing at the head of the table, a deliberate choice. They had gathered as a pack, but I was the one commanding the floor. We should talk, my brother began, his voice rough with forced calm. About last night. We didn't mean... I raised a hand. The gesture silenced him instantly. Last night, I said slowly, was illuminating. Their faces twitched. My sister reached for her glass of water, her hands trembling. My mother's smile was brittle, a mask stretched thin. You've misunderstood us, my mother said, her voice carrying that familiar lilt of control. We're family. We've always been family. You wouldn't turn against us. Her words dripped with the same poison she'd fed me all my life. I let them hang before I cut them apart. You turned first. The silence that followed was absolute. I walked to the sideboard, opened a leather folder and spread its contents across the oak table. Paper rustled like whispers of ghosts, deeds, trust papers, signed dates from years ago. Their eyes darted across the documents, confusion giving way to dread. I learned long ago, I continued, voice steady, that love in this family came with conditions. So I made preparations. Every property I own, every asset, is protected by trusts, irrevocable, untouchable. My sister frowned, reaching for one of the pages, but I pulled it back before her hand could touch it. And the recordings, I said, almost gently, sliding a small device across the table. The tiny black recorder seemed to glow like a weapon under the sunlight. Years of whispers, threats, the times you told me I wasn't wanted, the nights you laughed about how I would never belong. I kept them all. Their faces paled. My cousin shifted uncomfortably in his chair. My brother swallowed hard, rage simmering beneath his skin. That's, he began, but his voice cracked. Harassment, exclusion, emotional abandonment. I listed, each word sharp, precise. A court doesn't take kindly to those, especially when documented. My mother leaned forward, desperation breaking through her composure. You wouldn't take us to court. Not your own blood. I looked at her, truly looked at her. The woman who once wrote letters telling me not to come home, who erased me from photographs as though cutting me from existence. Blood meant nothing if it carried poison. My own blood, I repeated quietly. You mean the same blood that told me I was a burden? The same blood that left me alone on nights when I begged to belong? No, Mother, that blood was yours. The choice to cut was yours. I straightened, the full weight of control pressing down on them. My voice sharpened. And now the choice to protect myself is mine. The silence was suffocating. They stared at me, a mix of shock and fury, masks shattering under the weight of truth. Then, the doorbell rang. The sound echoed through the halls, clear, deliberate, final. Their heads turned as one, stiff and fearful. My heart remained steady. I had been waiting for this moment. Footsteps in the corridor. The door opened, and there he was, my lawyer, sharp suit, leather briefcase in hand, his expression professional and unreadable. He stepped into the dining room, nodded at me, and placed the briefcase on the table. The metallic click of the latch's opening rang louder than any shout could have. He pulled out a neat stack of documents, each paper crisp, official, heavy with consequence. He laid them down slowly, deliberately, restraining orders, drafted, ready to file. My family's faces drained of what little color they had left. Their hunger had curdled into fear, and for the first time in 12 years I felt free. They had two choices, leave with dignity or be dragged through court. The luxury of the living room felt like a stage set for ruin. Velvet drapes caught the daylight. Expensive art hung on the walls. The soft carpet muted every frantic footstep. And in the middle of it all, my family, huddled like cornered animals. The legal folders lay open on the coffee table, their crisp pages exposed under the lamplight. Every document gleamed like a blade. Restraining orders, trust protections, evidence sealed and ready. My lawyer sat silently at the edge of the room, his presence heavy, unmovable. He didn't need to speak. His silence was a verdict in itself. I remained standing, hands clasped behind my back. It's simple, I said. You have two choices. Leave with dignity, or be dragged through court. The silence cracked instantly. You think you can do this to us? My brother shouted, springing to his feet. His face was red, veins pulsing at his temples. We're your family. You owe us. I tilted my head calm. What was I worth to you 12 years ago? His jaw worked furiously, but no words came. Then my sister leapt in, her voice pitched high, brittle. We were young. Mistakes were made. But look at us now. We're trying to rebuild. Why can't you help? Her words shook with desperation, not love. She clutched her handbag like it could shield her from truth. Because I know what rebuilding means to you, I said evenly. It means taking what isn't yours. Again. Tears sprang to her eyes. For a moment I thought she would turn away, but instead her voice broke into confession. I sold them, all right? The heirlooms. The jewelry that was promised to you. I was drowning in debt. I didn't think. Her admission clattered across the room louder than any crash. I inhaled slowly, steadying the sting of betrayal. Those heirlooms weren't just objects. They were fragments of a history I had been denied, stolen by the same hands now trembling before me. You didn't think, I repeated. My words cut like ice. My father's voice rose then, deep and thunderous, rattling the windows. Enough. You've poisoned this family with lawyers and threats. You're heartless. I turned to him, meeting his furious eyes with unflinching calm. No, just finally free. For a moment the silence was heavier than stone. His fists tightened, his body shaking with rage. But he couldn't strike me with anything that would matter anymore. And then, the crack. My brother collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands. His voice was raw, ragged. "You don't understand. I owe money to people you don't say no to. If I don't pay them back," his voice trailed, the unspoken threat of violence hovering like smoke. My stomach clenched, but I kept my expression steady. His fear was real, but it wasn't my responsibility to save him from the choices he had made. "Those debts are yours," I said coldly. "Not mine." He lifted his head, his eyes wild, searching my face for softness, for weakness. He found none. "Please," he whispered. "Please, just a little." I leaned forward, my voice lowering to a blade's edge. "Not a single coin," the room erupted. Pleas overlapped with threats, shouts tangled with sobs. They begged, they cursed, they bargained. Every voice was frantic, every hand clawing for a lifeline. And still, I stood, calm, immovable. Finally, I raised my voice, sharp enough to silence them all. "Listen carefully. You will receive nothing from me. No money, no favors, no access to my life. There is only one condition under which you walk away from this without further consequences." Their eyes snapped to me, wide, desperate. "You cut all contact. Permanently." Shock rippled across their faces. My sister gasped. My brother cursed under his breath. My father shook his head in disbelief. "You can't mean—" my mother began, her voice a whisper. "I mean exactly that." My gaze swept across each of them. "No calls, no visits, no letters, nothing. You leave me in peace or the courts will handle the rest." The silence that followed was volcanic. Rage simmered. Grief twisted their features. Fear flickered in every eye. One by one, they rose. My brother muttered curses. My sister clutched her bag like a lifeline. My father glared with venom burning in his eyes. But it was my mother who lingered last. Her footsteps slow, her head turning as she reached the doorway. Her face was shadowed, her voice low, coiled with threat. "You'll regret this," she hissed. Blood always finds a way back. And then they were gone, the door slamming shut behind them, the echo reverberating through the house like a warning shot. I exhaled, steady but shaken. The storm had passed, but the thunder still rumbled in its wake. For the first time in 12 years, I was free. Yet her words clung to the air, sharp as broken glass. Blood always finds a way back. For the first time in years, silence felt like a gift. The door slammed hours ago, but the echo lingered in the mansion's long hallways, fading into something softer, almost holy. No shouting, no pleading, no footsteps pacing like predators in my home. Just silence, thick, steady, untouched. I stood at the foot of the staircase, my hand resting on the banister, staring at the empty hallway stretched before me. For years, I had dreamed of peace, but never once had I imagined it could feel this absolute. The living room bore traces of the battle, half-empty glasses of wine, chairs pushed back too quickly, folders still open on the table. Their absence was louder than their presence had ever been. I inhaled slowly, letting the quiet sink deep into my bones. For the first time in years, silence wasn't punishment. It was freedom. And yet, somewhere beneath the relief, a sting of loneliness pricked. Was cutting them off too final? Was there a sliver of family I had buried alive in my defense? I shook the thought away. I had spent 12 years chasing crumbs of their approval, waiting for a call that never came, dreaming of belonging while they feasted on my exclusion. If blood tied us, it had been poisoned long ago. I crossed the room, gathering the folders from the coffee table. Each page, each document, each recording was proof of what they had done. Proof I had survived. I carried them upstairs to my study, the oak door shutting with a soft but decisive click. Inside, the air smelled of old leather and ink, the walls lined with shelves of books I had chosen, knowledge I had earned. At the back of the room, I opened the safe, sliding the folders and the recorder inside. As the lock turned, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. Evidence didn't need to sit in plain sight anymore. It was there, guarded, ready, should I ever need it again, but I prayed I never would. Back downstairs, I poured a glass of wine, the deep red swirling like calm after a storm. I carried it to the grand piano in the corner of the room. Dust never settled there. I played often enough to keep the keys alive. I sat, the cool ivory beneath my fingertips, and pressed a single note. The sound rose through the house, clear and haunting, filling every space that had been soiled by their voices. Another note, then another. The melody built slowly, unplanned, a hymn to survival. My reflection in the glossy black lid showed a face no longer pleading, no longer waiting for permission. "They may never respect me," I whispered to the empty room, "but I will never again need their permission to live." The words hung in the air, stronger than any song. As I played, memories flickered. My mother's dismissive letters, my father's booming insults, my sister's sharp whispers that I was worthless. For years, their voices had shaped my silence. Tonight, they became background noise to my melody. Note by note, I rewrote the soundtrack of my life. Not theirs. Mine. By the time the last chord faded, the house felt different. Not just empty, but mine again. I set the glass of wine on the piano, leaned back, and closed my eyes. For the first time in decades, I felt peace without apology. Then, a buzz, my eyes opened. The phone on the table lit up, vibrating against the wood. The sound sliced through the calm, a serpent's hiss in the quiet. I stood, walked slowly across the room, and picked it up. One message, one sender, Mother. The screen glowed with 2 words that clenched my stomach tight. Last chance. I stared at it for a long moment, the letters like claws reaching through glass. A threat? A plea? A promise? The old me would have answered, would have begged, would have tried to believe there was something worth saving, but not now. My thumb hovered, then pressed down with finality. The screen went dark, the message erased. The silence returned, deeper this time, complete, and I knew I had chosen peace. Their bloodline may end in bitterness. Mine begins in strength. Weeks had passed since the night my family walked out of my house with slammed doors and venom on their tongues. Their absence had become the texture of my days. No more threats, no more bargaining, no more poisonous promises disguised as love. And yet my life had not shrunk. It had widened. The ballroom shimmered with golden light that evening, chandeliers scattering warmth across polished floors. The hum of voices rose with the music of a string quartet, laughter bouncing off marble pillars. Tonight was the annual charity gala, one I had supported quietly for years. But this time I wasn't simply a donor in the shadows. Tonight, they wanted me on stage. As I stood among guests in gowns and suits, I felt eyes on me. Not in judgment as my family once cast, but in recognition, in respect. The announcer's voice boomed through the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the benefactor whose new scholarship fund will send hundreds of students to university. Applause thundered, genuine and warm. My chest tightened, not with fear, but with something close to pride. I walked to the podium, lights bright on my face. For a moment I heard my father's voice sneer, "You'll never belong in rooms like this." But here I was, and the room waited for me. I spoke of opportunity, of second chances, of building bridges where walls had stood. I spoke of the power of education to break chains, to rewrite stories. My voice didn't tremble. It carried. When I finished, the applause returned, rising to its feet. At the reception afterward, strangers became friends. They shook my hand, clinked glasses, and told me their own stories, of struggle, of hope, of gratitude. For once, conversation wasn't poisoned by the weight of old bloodlines. But then came the question I had expected, from a curious journalist with a notepad in hand. "Your generosity is remarkable. Do your family share in this work?" The ballroom seemed to quiet around me. My wine glass felt suddenly heavy. I could have told them everything. The betrayals, the greed, the courtroom threats. I could have burned my family's name to ash with a single sentence. The temptation was sharp. Vindication whispered at the edges of my tongue. But then I looked around me, at the young volunteers in matching jackets, at the students smiling with futures newly possible, at the people who had chosen to stand beside me. And I realized, family is not inherited. It is built. I smiled at the journalist, my voice calm. "My family is here," I said, gesturing to the crowd. "The people who believe in change, in lifting each other up. Blood may connect us by birth, but love and purpose, that's what connects us for life." They wrote my words down, and the story would travel further than any scandal ever could. Later that night, as the gala wound down, I stood by the balcony overlooking the city lights. A friend joined me, someone who had been at my side through the storm. "You've built something no one can take," they said softly, clinking their glass against mine. I felt the truth of it settle deep inside me. "Exactly," I replied. "That's my family now." The words didn't sting. They didn't ache. They fit. From isolation, I had found empowerment. From betrayal, I had forged purpose. The bitterness of my bloodline would end with them. Let them cling to old grudges, to poisoned heirlooms, to debts and lies. I had no place in their history anymore. My legacy would be written in scholarships, in opportunities, in the laughter of young voices rising without chains. As I left the gala, the night air was cool and clean. My reflection in the glass doors showed a person whole, no longer the child begging for a seat at the table, no longer the sibling silenced by shame. I walked into the night with my head high, knowing the truth. Their story ended in bitterness. Mine began in strength. If you were standing in my place, would you forgive or finally close the door for good? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories of betrayal, justice, and strength.